You can love someone deeply and slowly disappear in the process. Not all at once, not dramatically, not in a way that shocks you. It happens quietly. You stop arguing your opinion. You stop doing things that used to excite you. You adjust your schedule. You adjust your personality. You adjust your standards. And one day, you look in the mirror and feel slightly unfamiliar to yourself. I've seen this happen to people I care about. A close friend of mine used to be fiercely independent. She had routines, goals, a strong sense of identity. Then she fell in love. At first, it looked beautiful. She was glowing, she was invested, she was committed. But slowly, something shifted. She stopped coming to the gym. She canceled plans more often. She started asking, "Do you think he's upset?" More than she asked, "What do I want?" Her mood depended on his replies. Her confidence depended on his tone. Her peace depended on his presence. She didn't lose love. She lost herself, and she's not alone. Another friend of mine, confident, social, secure, slowly became anxious in his relationship, checking his phone constantly, overanalyzing texts, apologizing for things that weren't his fault, shrinking to keep the peace. From the outside, nothing looked abusive, nothing looked extreme, it was just subtle. And that's the dangerous part. Losing yourself in a relationship rarely looks dramatic. It looks like devotion. It looks like compromise. It looks like being understanding. Until you realize you've been understanding everyone but yourself. Maybe you felt this too. Maybe you found yourself waiting for a text like your emotional stability depends on it. Maybe you've avoided saying what you really think because you didn't want to cause tension. Maybe you've changed your interests, your priorities, your boundaries, slowly, just to feel secure. And here's the hard truth. You don't lose yourself because you love too much. You lose yourself because you're afraid to lose, afraid of abandonment, afraid of conflict, afraid of being alone, afraid that if you fully show up as yourself, they might walk away. And your brain interprets that possibility as danger. This isn't weakness, it's wiring. Human beings are built for attachment. Rejection activates the same areas in the brain as physical pain. When someone pulls away, your nervous system reacts like survival is at risk. So what do? You adapt, you soften, you overgive, you over-explain, you over-function, you convince yourself it's love. But love should never require self-erasure. A healthy relationship is a bridge between two identities, not a place where one identity dissolves. Yet so many people confuse emotional intensity with connection. They confuse anxiety with passion. They confuse sacrifice with loyalty. And over time, their identity gets replaced with the relationship itself. You stop asking, "What do I want?" And you start asking, "What will keep this stable?" You stop choosing based on self-respect. You start choosing based on fear. And here's something even deeper. Sometimes losing yourself feels safer than standing alone. Because if you're fused with someone else, you don't have to face your own emptiness. If your identity is wrapped in us, you don't have to define me. That's why this pattern is so powerful. It's not just about the relationship, it's about your sense of self. In this audiobook, we're not here to blame love. We're not here to shame attachment. And we're definitely not here to tell you to leave someone. We're here to understand something more important. Why do you disappear inside relationships? And how do you come back without closing your heart? Because taking your power back doesn't mean becoming cold. It doesn't mean loving less. It doesn't mean building walls. It means remembering who you were before you started shrinking. It means loving someone without abandoning yourself in the process. Over the next hour, we're going to break this down layer by layer. We'll look at the fear that drives over attachment, the small compromises that slowly erase identity, the psychology of emotional dependency, why people-pleasing feels like safety, how boundaries quietly disappear, and most importantly, how to rebuild yourself without destroying love. Because the strongest relationships are not built on need. They are built on choice. Two whole individuals standing next to each other, not leaning for survival, but choosing connection. If at any point during this audiobook you recognize yourself, don't judge it. Awareness is not shame. Awareness is power. And the moment you see the pattern, you're no longer trapped inside it. Let's begin with the root, the fear that starts it all. Chapter 1. The fear that starts it. Or before you ever lose yourself in a relationship, something else happens first. You feel unsafe, not physically unsafe, emotionally unsafe. There is a subtle fear that activates the moment you sense distance. A delayed reply, a shorter tone, a shift in energy, and your mind immediately asks, did I do something wrong? Are they pulling away? Is this about to end? This reaction feels automatic because it is. When attachment feels threatened, your nervous system does not respond calmly. It responds as if something important is at risk. Because to the human brain, attachment equals survival. Thousands of years ago, being excluded from the group meant vulnerability. Isolation meant danger. So your brain developed a sensitivity to signs of rejection, and today, that wiring still exists. The problem is not that you care. The problem is that your nervous system overreacts to small shifts, and when fear activates, you don't think clearly. You adapt. You text first. You apologize faster. You soften your opinion. You avoid confrontation, not because you're weak, but because you want to reduce the threat. Let's go deeper. Many people who lose themselves in relationships didn't learn stability in love growing up. Maybe affection was inconsistent. Maybe approval had to be earned. Maybe conflict felt overwhelming. Maybe love felt conditional. When love feels unpredictable early in life, the brain learns one rule: stay close at all costs. So in adulthood, when someone becomes important to you, that old pattern activates again. You don't just want connection, you want certainty. And when certainty feels shaky, fear takes control. You may not even notice it consciously. You just feel anxious, restless, hyper-aware. You monitor tone, you analyze words, you overinterpret silence. And slowly, your behavior shifts around that anxiety. You start prioritizing harmony over honesty. You think, if I stay agreeable, they won't leave. If I don't upset them, I'll be safe. If I give more, they'll stay. But here's the paradox. The more you abandon yourself to keep someone, the less secure you actually feel. Because deep down, you know you're not being fully seen. You're being accepted, but only the edited version of you. And that creates internal tension. You might win short-term closeness, but you lose long-term self-trust. And self-trust is the foundation of confidence. When you repeatedly silence your needs to avoid conflict, your brain learns something dangerous. My needs are less important than connection. Over time, this becomes identity. You don't just fear losing them. You fear being alone with yourself, because if you detach from them, who are you? This is where many people get stuck. They believe the pain of losing the relationship would be worse than the pain of losing themselves. But the truth is more subtle. The fear of abandonment often hides a deeper fear, the fear of not being enough. If someone leaves, it feels like proof. Proof that you weren't lovable enough. Proof that you weren't valuable enough. Proof that you were replaceable. So instead of risking that wound, you shrink preemptively. You adjust before they ask. You overcompensate before they complain. You give before they withdraw. This is not love. This is survival strategy. And survival strategies are powerful. They feel urgent, necessary, justified, but they are reactive. And reactive love is unstable. Here's something important to understand. Secure people also care. deeply. They also feel pain when someone pulls away. The difference is this: they don't interpret distance as identity threat. They think, if this works, good. If it doesn't, I'll survive. Their nervous system does not collapse into panic, because their sense of self exists independently of the relationship. That's the key difference. When your identity is anchored internally, attachment becomes a choice. When your identity is anchored externally, attachment becomes dependency. So the real question is not, why do I love so much? The real question is, why does distance feel like danger? If you pause and reflect honestly, you might notice something. When someone pulls away, what scares you most? Is it truly losing them, or is it losing the version of yourself that feels chosen? Being chosen feels powerful. It feels validating. It feels grounding. But if your stability depends on being chosen, then every shift feels threatening. And this is where power slowly leaks away, because your emotional state becomes externally controlled. A text brings relief. Silence brings anxiety. Attention brings confidence. Distance brings insecurity. Your mood becomes reactive. And when your mood is reactive, your behavior follows. You start making decisions based on fear reduction instead of self-respect. You stay quiet to avoid tension. You agree to avoid arguments. You overextend to avoid rejection. At first, it feels harmless, but repetition builds identity, and eventually, you don't even recognize that you're operating from fear. You think this is just how relationships work. But healthy relationships are not built on fear management. They are built on emotional regulation. There is a massive difference. Fear management says, how do I keep this stable? Emotional regulation says, how do I stay stable regardless? One depends on control, the other depends on inner strength. Taking your power back begins here, not by confronting them, not by making dramatic changes, but by noticing when fear is driving your behavior. The next time you feel that wave of anxiety, pause. Instead of reacting immediately, ask yourself, what am I afraid of right now? Not what they did, not what they might do. What are you afraid of? Abandonment, rejection, being alone, not being enough. When you name the fear, you separate from it. And the moment you separate from fear, you regain choice. Power is not loud. Power is not controlling. Power is the ability to respond instead of react. And if fear is the root of losing yourself, then awareness is the first step to reclaiming yourself. In the next chapter, we'll explore something even more subtle: how love slowly becomes your identity, and why that feels so intoxicating at first. Chapter 2. When love becomes your identity. At first, it feels beautiful. You meet someone, there's chemistry, there's connection, there's intensity, you feel seen, and something inside you relaxes. For the first time in a long time, you don't feel alone in the world. This is where it begins. Not with fear, not with insecurity, but with fusion. Psychologists call it identity merging. It's when the line between me and we starts to blur. At first, that blur feels romantic. You start saying we instead of I. You plan around each other. You imagine the future together. There's nothing unhealthy about that. The problem begins when the relationship doesn't just become part of your life. It becomes your life. You stop asking, what do I want this weekend? And start asking, what are we doing? You stop choosing based on your preferences and start choosing based on preserving closeness. And slowly, without realizing it, your identity begins to reorganize around the relationship. Your emotional stability becomes tied to it. Your sense of purpose becomes tied to it. Your daily motivation becomes tied to it. When it feels good, you feel powerful. When it feels unstable, you feel lost. This is where love turns from connection into dependency. Not because you're weak, but because your identity shifted outward. Here's something subtle. When you're single, you are forced to define yourself independently. Your routines, your goals, your hobbies, your friendships. You build a structure around who you are. But when you enter a relationship, especially an intense one, that structure gets rearranged. You prioritize time together. You synchronize schedules. You emotionally invest. And that's healthy. To a point. The danger appears when you stop maintaining the parts of yourself that existed before them. You used to read. You used to train. You used to build. You used to reflect. Now, you wait. Wait for their message. Wait for their approval. Wait for shared plans. Your energy shifts from self-development to relationship maintenance. And over time, you don't just love them. You rely on them to feel like yourself. That's the key shift. Instead of, I am whole and I choose you, it becomes, I feel whole because of you. That feels romantic, but it's unstable. Because if your wholeness depends on someone else's presence, then your identity is fragile. And fragility creates anxiety. You begin monitoring signs of change. You become hyper-aware of distance. Not because you're dramatic, but because losing them would mean losing the version of you that feels complete. This is why breakups feel so disorienting. It's not just losing a person. It's losing the structure your identity reorganized around. And even inside relationships, that fear exists quietly. What if this changes? What if I lose this? And that fear leads to subtle self-adjustment. You align more, you challenge less, you agree faster, not consciously, but strategically. You want to protect the identity you built around the relationship. Here's a question that might feel uncomfortable. If this relationship ended tomorrow, who would you be? Not practically, emotionally. Would you still recognize yourself? Would your routine still stand? Would your purpose still exist? Or would you feel like you have to rebuild from scratch? If the answer feels shaky, that's a sign identity fusion has occurred, and identity fusion feels intoxicating at first, because it removes uncertainty. Instead of facing the world alone, you move as a pair. Instead of defining yourself internally, you define yourself relationally. It feels safer. But safety built on fusion is fragile. Healthy love is interdependent. Unhealthy love becomes enmeshed. Interdependence means, I value you, but I remain me. Enmeshment means, I lose clarity about where you end and I begin. In enmeshment, your emotions sink too tightly. If they're stressed, you're destabilized. If they're distant, you panic. If they're critical, your self-worth drops. Your internal state becomes externally dictated. And slowly, your identity shrinks to fit the relationship. You might even start introducing yourself differently, not just by name, but by role. I'm his. I'm hers. We're doing this. We decided. Again, none of this is wrong in moderation. The danger is when your individuality becomes negotiable. When you silence your opinion to avoid friction. When you hide interests they don't share. When you abandon friendships that don't include them. It doesn't feel like loss. It feels like commitment. But commitment without self-continuity leads to resentment. And resentment is the shadow of self-abandonment. You may not feel it immediately, but over time, something inside you whispers, I miss myself. That whisper gets ignored because the relationship still exists. But internally, something is thinning. Your boundaries weaken, your voice softens, your standards lower. Not dramatically, gradually. And because the process is gradual, you don't resist it. You adapt. Until one day, you realize your sense of direction depends entirely on the relationship's stability. That's when anxiety spikes. Because your identity is no longer anchored internally. It's floating externally. And anything external can change. Taking your power back does not mean detaching emotionally. It means reclaiming internal anchoring. It means asking, what parts of me have I paused? What parts of me have I diluted? What parts of me exist only when I'm alone? Because love should expand identity, not replace it. In the next chapter, we'll explore something even more subtle, the small compromises that don't look dangerous, but slowly erase you anyway. Because losing yourself rarely happens through one big decision. It happens through 1,000 tiny ones. Chapter 3. The small compromises that slowly erase you. You don't lose yourself in one dramatic moment. You don't wake up one day and decide, today I will abandon who I am. It doesn't work like that. It happens quietly. Through small compromises that feel harmless at first. You cancel one plan with friends. You stay silent during one uncomfortable comment. You laugh at something that didn't sit right. You agree to something you didn't really want. And because each moment seems small, you dismiss it. It's not a big deal. I don't want to make it awkward. I'll let it go this time. But identity is shaped through repetition, and every time you override your truth to preserve harmony. You send yourself a message. My feelings are negotiable. At first, you don't feel the cost, because the reward feels immediate. Less tension, more closeness, temporary peace. But temporary peace built on self-silencing always accumulates pressure. Let's look at how this really unfolds. Imagine this scenario. You're out with your partner, and they make a subtle joke about something personal. Your ambition, your habits, your personality. Everyone laughs. You smile too. But inside, something tightens. You have two options in that moment. Option 1. You calmly say later, that joke actually bothered me. Option 2. You say nothing and convince yourself you're being mature. Most people choose option 2, not because they don't value themselves, but because they value stability more. And that choice seems wise in the short term. But here's what actually happens internally. When you silence discomfort, your nervous system stores it. When you minimize your own reaction, your self-trust weakens. And when this pattern repeats, you start adapting your personality to prevent future discomfort. You become more agreeable, more careful, more filtered, not consciously, strategically. You start scanning for reactions before you speak. You pre-edit your thoughts. You soften opinions that once felt strong. And slowly, your authenticity becomes conditional. You tell yourself it's compromise, but compromise is mutual adjustment. Self-erasure is one-sided shrinking. There is a massive difference. Healthy compromise sounds like, I see your perspective and here's mine. Self-erasure sounds like, it's fine, don't worry about it. Even when it's not fine. And here's the deeper danger. The more you suppress your reactions, the less clear you become about your own boundaries. Because boundaries are reinforced through expression. If you never express discomfort, you don't strengthen the muscle of self-advocacy. You weaken it. Over time, you stop noticing when something crosses the line. Not because the line moved, but because your awareness faded. Another subtle compromise looks like this. You start adjusting your goals. Maybe you once had strong personal ambitions, a fitness goal, a career milestone, a creative pursuit, but the relationship demands time and energy. So you tell yourself, I'll focus on that later. This relationship is more important right now. And slowly, later becomes indefinite. You don't quit your dreams. You just deprioritize them. And each time you choose the relationship over self-growth, your identity tilts outward. The problem is not prioritizing love. The problem is consistently deprioritizing yourself. When your life becomes organized around someone else's emotional weather, your direction becomes unstable. If they're motivated, you feel inspired. If they're stagnant, you slow down. If they're uncertain, you hesitate. Your momentum becomes synchronized. That might sound romantic, but it's dangerous if you lose independent movement. Strong relationships are built by two people walking side by side, not one person standing still while the other decides direction. Let's examine another small compromise. You feel uncomfortable with something. Maybe how often they cancel, how they speak during arguments, or how they avoid accountability. Instead of addressing it directly, you rationalize it. They're stressed. They didn't mean it. I'm overthinking. Sometimes that's true, but sometimes it's avoidance, because confronting it would risk tension, and tension feels threatening. So you trade clarity for comfort. Each time you rationalize behavior that conflicts with your values, you disconnect from yourself slightly. It's subtle, but over months or years, subtle disconnection becomes identity confusion. You start asking, why do I feel drained? Why am I more anxious than before? Why do I feel smaller? It's not because love is wrong. It's because you stopped standing fully inside it. You bent too many times, and bending repeatedly without resetting your posture changes your shape. Here's a powerful question. When was the last time you clearly expressed a need without apologizing for it? Not aggressively, not emotionally, just directly. If that feels difficult, that's a sign the compromise pattern is active. Because when you're aligned internally, expressing a need feels natural. When you've been shrinking, expressing a need feels risky. That risk perception is the result of repeated self-suppression. But here's something hopeful. The process that erased you slowly can also restore you slowly. Rebuilding identity doesn't require dramatic confrontation. It requires micro-assertions. Small acts of alignment, saying, actually, I'd prefer this. Saying, that didn't sit right with me. Saying, I need time to think. Each time you do that, you reinforce internal stability. Each time you choose honesty over harmony, you strengthen self-trust. And self-trust is what prevents identity erosion. Losing yourself is not about loving too deeply. It's about compromising too consistently. And consistency shapes identity. If you consistently silence yourself, you become smaller. If you consistently honor yourself, you become solid. In the next chapter, we'll explore something that makes these compromises even stronger: the dopamine cycle of emotional highs and lows. Because sometimes, it's not just fear that keeps you shrinking. It's addiction to intensity. Chapter 4. The addiction to emotional highs and lows. Sometimes you don't lose yourself because you're afraid. Sometimes you lose yourself because you're addicted. Not addicted to the person, addicted to the emotional intensity. There is something powerful about unpredictability. When affection is consistent, the nervous system relaxes. But when affection is inconsistent, hot and cold, present and distant, the nervous system becomes alert. And alertness creates stimulation. Stimulation releases dopamine. Dopamine is not the chemical of happiness. It's the chemical of anticipation. It spikes when you're waiting for a message, waiting for reassurance, waiting for closeness to return. This is why unstable relationships can feel intoxicating. The uncertainty makes the connection feel valuable. If they always reply quickly, it feels normal. If they sometimes withdraw and then come back intensely, it feels electric. Your brain learns this pattern. Distance creates anxiety. Reconnection creates relief. Relief feels powerful, and that relief gets mistaken for love. But relief is not love. Relief is the removal of fear. And when fear and relief cycle repeatedly, you create what psychologists call a reinforcement loop. The more unpredictable the reward, the stronger the attachment. It's the same principle that keeps people pulling slot machines. You don't know when the reward will come, so you keep trying. In relationships, this looks like emotional chasing. They pull away, you feel anxious, you overextend to restore closeness. They return warmly. You feel euphoric. That euphoria wires the behavior deeper. Your brain starts associating emotional chaos with passion. Calm starts to feel boring. Stability starts to feel flat, and that's when identity erosion accelerates. Because in order to maintain the highs, you tolerate the lows. You excuse inconsistency. You justify mood swings. You tell yourself they're just stressed. They've been hurt before. I just need to be patient. Patience becomes endurance. Endurance becomes self-neglect. And the emotional roller coaster continues. Let's break this down deeper. When someone withdraws emotionally, your nervous system activates fight or flight. Heart rate increases. Thoughts race. You replay conversations. You search for clues. Your body feels unsettled. This state is uncomfortable, so you do something to resolve it. You text, you call, you overanalyze, you try to regain connection. When they finally respond warmly, your nervous system calms. That calm feels like safety, but it's not stable safety. It's relief from instability, and relief is addictive. Over time, your emotional baseline shifts. Instead of expecting consistency, you expect fluctuation. Instead of demanding clarity, you accept ambiguity. And because the emotional spikes feel intense, you interpret them as depth. But intensity is not depth. Intensity is volatility. Depth is consistency. This is where many people confuse chaos with chemistry. They think, I've never felt this strongly before. Of course you haven't. Your nervous system is constantly activated. Strong emotions don't always mean strong connection. Sometimes they mean unresolved attachment wounds. There's another layer to this. If you grew up in environments where love was inconsistent, emotional unpredictability feels familiar. And what feels familiar feels safe, even if it's painful. So when someone gives you affection and then withdraws it, your nervous system recognizes the pattern. It feels like home, not comfortable, but known. And known feels controllable, even when it isn't. So you chase the highs, you endure the lows, and gradually you adapt your identity to maintain the cycle. You become hyper-attentive, you become emotionally reactive. You prioritize their moods over your stability. Because if they're stable, you feel stable. And that's where power slips away. When your nervous system is externally controlled, your identity weakens. Because identity requires internal anchoring, if your emotions swing with someone else's behavior, you're not grounded, you are tethered. And tethered people shrink to keep the rope from snapping. You say less. You ask for less. You expect less. All to maintain the next high. But here's the truth. Healthy love feels calm more often than it feels electric. Healthy love doesn't spike your anxiety daily. Healthy love doesn't require emotional gambling. If calm feels boring, that's not because calm is wrong. It's because your nervous system is conditioned to chaos. And reclaiming your power means recalibrating your nervous system. It means learning to tolerate stability, learning to sit in consistency without needing drama, learning to choose partners who don't trigger survival mode, and most importantly, learning to regulate yourself when distance appears. Instead of reacting immediately, you pause. Instead of chasing reassurance, you breathe. Instead of assuming threat, you observe. This pause breaks the dopamine loop. It teaches your brain that uncertainty is survivable. And when uncertainty becomes survivable, dependency weakens. You begin to feel something new. Not euphoria, not panic, but steadiness. Steadiness feels unfamiliar at first, but steadiness builds strength, and strength rebuilds identity. Because when your nervous system is regulated, your decisions become intentional. You don't shrink to maintain intensity. You choose alignment over adrenaline. In the next chapter, we'll explore another powerful force that keeps people disappearing in love: the need to please. Because sometimes it's not the highs and lows that erase you. It's the belief that love must be earned. Chapter 5. When love feels like something you have to earn somewhere along the way, You learn that love is not automatic. It must be maintained, protected, secured, and sometimes earned. You may not say it out loud, but deep inside, there is a quiet belief. If I am good enough, kind enough, patient enough, they will stay. This belief doesn't sound harmful. It sounds responsible. It sounds mature. It even sounds loving, but underneath it is something fragile. Because when love feels like something you must earn, you stop relating as an equal. You start performing. You overgive. You over-accommodate. You over-function. You become the stable one, the understanding one, the one who adjusts. At first, it feels empowering. You feel valuable because you're needed. You feel secure because you're useful. But usefulness is not the same as worth. And when your sense of worth becomes tied to how much you provide, you lose your center. Let's look at how this shows up in real life. They forget something important to you. You tell yourself it's fine. They show up late repeatedly. You minimize it. They avoid difficult conversations. You carry the emotional weight instead. You think, I'll be patient. I don't want to pressure them. I can handle it. And you can. That's the problem. You're strong enough to tolerate more than you should. People-pleasing is rarely about being weak. It's about being highly adaptive. You sense tension early. You anticipate needs quickly. You resolve issues before they escalate. You are emotionally intelligent. But when that intelligence is used to avoid discomfort rather than create balance, it turns against you. You begin to believe that your value lies in how easy you are to love. You try not to be too much, not too emotional, not too demanding, not too expressive. You shrink your needs to stay convenient, and convenience feels like safety, because if you're low maintenance, they won't leave. If you're supportive, they won't replace you. If you don't challenge them, they won't withdraw. But here's the hidden cost. When you constantly suppress your needs, you create quiet resentment, not explosive resentment, silent resentment. You start feeling tired, drained, unseen, and yet you continue giving because stopping feels risky. This is the trap of overgiving. It creates temporary closeness, but long-term imbalance. Love becomes transactional internally, not in a conscious way, but emotionally. I give more, so they'll stay. That equation feels logical. But healthy love does not operate on fear-based math. It operates on mutual presence. Let's go deeper. Many people who overgive grew up learning that love was conditional. Praise came when you achieved. Affection came when you behaved. Approval came when you performed. So you internalized a rule. To be loved, I must be good. And good often meant agreeable, selfless, responsible, mature. So in relationships, when conflict appears, your instinct is not to assert, it's to adjust. Because adjustment kept love stable in the past. But adult relationships require something different. They require authenticity, and authenticity includes friction. If you never allow friction, you never test stability. You only maintain surface peace. Here's something powerful to understand. When you constantly give without boundaries, you train people to expect it. Not maliciously, just naturally. Humans adapt to patterns. If you always accommodate, they assume you're comfortable. If you never voice discomfort, they assume there isn't any. And eventually you feel invisible. But invisibility is not imposed. It is allowed. That might sound harsh, but it's empowering. Because if you allowed the pattern, you can change it. Taking your power back in this area doesn't require confrontation. It requires recalibration. Instead of asking, how can I make this easier for them? Ask, is this fair to me? Instead of thinking, I don't want to be difficult. Ask, why does expressing a need feel like being difficult? Healthy love can handle your needs. Healthy love can handle your emotions. Healthy love can handle your boundaries. If expressing yourself destabilizes the relationship was unstable already. And here is the truth many people avoid. You cannot build security by abandoning yourself. You can build attachment, you can build intensity, you can build dependency, but not security. Security comes from mutual respect, and mutual respect requires two visible identities. Not one visible, one accommodating. If you feel like the emotional backbone of the relationship, pause. If you feel responsible for keeping things stable, pause. If you feel anxious about asking for reassurance, pause. These are signals that love has shifted into performance. And performance is exhausting. You deserve a relationship where you can show up fully, not perfectly, not constantly strong, but honestly. The shift begins small. Say what you prefer. Say what bothers you. Say what you need. Not dramatically, calmly, directly. The first time will feel uncomfortable because your nervous system associates assertion with risk. But the more you practice it, the safer it becomes. And something surprising will happen. Either the relationship will adjust and grow stronger, or it will reveal its fragility. Both outcomes are clarity, and clarity is power. Because love that requires self-erasure is not love that sustains identity. In the next chapter, we'll explore another quiet way people disappear. How boundaries dissolve, not through force, but through slow tolerance. Because sometimes, the biggest loss doesn't come from what you give. It comes from what you allow. Chapter 6. The slow disappearance of your boundaries. No one wakes up and decides to abandon their boundaries. Boundaries don't collapse overnight. They erode, quietly, gradually, almost politely. It starts with something small. You say yes when you meant maybe. You say maybe when you meant no. You laugh when you felt uncomfortable. You convince yourself it's not worth the argument. I don't want to seem dramatic. I'll let this one slide. And sliding becomes a habit. Boundaries are not loud declarations. They are daily reinforcements of self-respect. When you reinforce them, they strengthen. When you ignore them, they weaken. And most people don't ignore boundaries because they don't have standards. They ignore them because they fear consequences. They fear that saying no will create distance. They fear that asserting a need will create tension. They fear that protecting themselves will cost connection. So they choose connection, at least what feels like connection. But connection without boundaries is not intimacy. It's enmeshment. Let's understand what a boundary really is. A boundary is not control over someone else. It is clarity about what you accept. It is the line between what honors you and what diminishes you. When someone cancels repeatedly and you stay silent, that line fades. When someone speaks disrespectfully and you rationalize it, that line shifts. When someone invades your emotional space and you tolerate it, that line blurs. At first, you don't feel the loss because the relationship continues. But internally, something changes. Each time you allow something that conflicts with your values, your nervous system registers it. Not dramatically, subtly. You feel slightly unsettled, slightly smaller, slightly less anchored. And if this repeats long enough, your sense of self becomes negotiable. You start adjusting your boundaries to fit their comfort, not because they demand it, but because you preemptively accommodate. That's the danger. Many people don't lose boundaries through force. They lose them through tolerance. Tolerance can look mature, it can look patient, it can look loving. But tolerance without limit becomes self-abandonment. Let's say your partner frequently dismisses your feelings during arguments. You bring something up. They say you're overreacting. You feel hurt. But instead of holding the line, you question yourself. Maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe I'm too sensitive. Over time, you stop bringing things up, not because they improved, but because you adjusted. And when you stop expressing discomfort, you train yourself to suppress truth. That suppression weakens identity, because identity is expressed through boundaries. Boundaries are the external shape of internal self-worth. If your boundaries are unclear, your self-worth is unstable. Another subtle boundary loss happens with time. You begin rearranging your schedule constantly, canceling commitments, abandoning routines, letting personal goals slide. At first, it feels flexible, but flexibility without reciprocity becomes imbalance. Healthy flexibility is mutual. Unhealthy flexibility is one-sided. If you are always the one adjusting, always the one compromising, always the one absorbing inconvenience, your boundary system is compromised. And here's something important. People rarely respect boundaries you do not enforce. Not because they're malicious, but because humans adapt to what is permitted. If you never express discomfort, they assume there is none. If you never say no, they assume yes is natural. If you always absorb impact, they stop noticing it. And resentment grows silently. Resentment is a signal. It tells you a boundary was crossed without acknowledgement. It tells you something inside you feels unseen. But many people ignore resentment. They label it as selfishness, or weakness, or immaturity. So they suppress it too. And when resentment has nowhere to go, it turns inward. You start doubting yourself, second-guessing yourself, shrinking further. Boundaries are not about creating distance. They're about preserving clarity. Clarity about who you are, clarity about what you value, clarity about how you expect to be treated. When boundaries are strong, love feels safer, not more rigid, safer. Because both people understand the lines. Without boundaries, everything becomes ambiguous, and ambiguity fuels anxiety. You start asking, am I allowed to feel this? Am I allowed to say this? Am I allowed to need this? The fact that you're asking those questions means the boundary is already weak. Taking your power back means rebuilding micro-boundaries. Not dramatic ultimatums, not aggressive demands, simple statements. That doesn't work for me. I need time. I'm not comfortable with that. Short, clear, calm. You don't over-explain. You don't apologize for existing. You state, and then you observe the response. A healthy relationship adjusts. An unhealthy one resists clarity. Either way, you gain information, and information restores power. Because power is not dominance. Power is alignment. Alignment between what you feel and what you express. When those two are connected, identity strengthens. When they are disconnected, identity erodes. The moment you start honoring small boundaries, something shifts internally. You feel steadier, less reactive, less anxious. Because you are no longer betraying yourself for temporary peace. And that is the core of reclaiming identity. You cannot rebuild yourself if you keep allowing what diminishes you. In the next chapter, we'll explore something even more complex. The illusion that you can fix someone, and how that role slowly consumes your sense of self. Because sometimes, you don't lose yourself through fear or tolerance. You lose yourself trying to save. Chapter 7. The illusion of fixing someone. There is a version of losing yourself that feels noble. It doesn't look insecure. It doesn't look anxious. It looks strong, supportive, loyal, devoted. You tell yourself, they just need someone who understands them. They've been hurt. I can help them grow. And at first it feels meaningful. You feel needed. You feel important. You feel chosen in a deeper way, not just for affection, but for stability. But slowly, something shifts. You stop being a partner, and you start becoming a fixer. You analyze their moods, you manage their emotions, you anticipate their triggers, you excuse their behavior, you absorb their instability, and without realizing it, your role changes. You're no longer relating as equals. You are caretaking. Now, caretaking is not always unhealthy. In moments of stress or crisis, relationships require support. But when support becomes your identity, you disappear. Because when you are always focused on improving them, you stop developing yourself. Let's look deeper at why this happens. Many people who take on the fixer role learned early that love comes from being responsible. Maybe you were the mature one growing up. Maybe you managed other people's emotions. Maybe you solved problems in your family. Maybe you learned that being useful kept you valued. So when you meet someone who feels unstable, wounded, or chaotic, something activates inside you. You feel a sense of purpose. You think, I can handle this. I'm strong enough. They just need consistency. And for a while, that feels empowering. You feel grounded while they are scattered. You feel calm while they are reactive. You feel stable while they are uncertain. But over time, that imbalance creates pressure. Because relationships are not meant to be rehabilitation projects. They are meant to be partnerships. When you are always the regulator, always the mature one, always the emotional anchor, exhaustion builds. But you don't leave. Because leaving would mean admitting you couldn't fix it. And sometimes, fixing them becomes tied to your self-worth. If they improve, you feel successful. If they don't, you feel inadequate. Their growth becomes your validation, and that is dangerous. Because now your identity depends on someone else's progress. If they relapse into old behaviors, you blame yourself. If they pull away, you overanalyze what you did wrong. If they remain inconsistent, you double your effort. You give more patience, more understanding, more tolerance, and less of yourself. There is a subtle ego hidden inside the savior role. Not arrogance, but control. It feels safer to believe you can fix someone than to admit you cannot control them. It feels powerful to think your love is strong enough to transform them. But transformation cannot be outsourced. People change when they decide to, not when you sacrifice enough. And here is the painful truth. Sometimes, trying to fix someone is a way of avoiding your own emptiness. When you focus entirely on their healing, you don't have to confront your own unmet needs. When you are busy stabilizing them, you don't have to ask whether you feel fulfilled. When you are constantly managing their chaos, you don't have to examine your own identity. Fixing becomes distraction, and distraction feels purposeful. But purpose built on imbalance is unstable. You might notice something else. When they finally have a good day, when they finally open up, when they finally improve, you feel relief, even pride. But when they regress, you feel disappointment, maybe even resentment. And resentment is the signal that your role has exceeded equality. Healthy love allows support without self-sacrifice. It allows compassion without collapse. It allows empathy without identity loss. But when you start believing that their stability depends on you, you carry weight that is not yours. And carrying someone else's emotional responsibility for too long bends your posture. You shrink your needs because theirs feel bigger. You delay your goals because theirs feel urgent. You suppress your frustrations because they're going through something. And slowly, your life organizes around their healing. But here's something crucial. If someone truly wants to grow, they will seek growth themselves. They will take accountability. They will initiate change. If growth only happens when you push, persuade, explain, and endure, it is not growth. It is dependency. And dependency always costs identity. Taking your power back in this area means releasing control. It means understanding that loving someone does not require saving them. It means accepting that you are not responsible for another adult's emotional maturity. That can feel uncomfortable because without the fixer role, you might feel uncertain. If you are not rescuing, who are you? If you are not stabilizing, what is your value? But that discomfort is temporary. Because when you step out of the savior role, something unexpected happens. You regain energy, you regain clarity, you regain space, and in that space, you rediscover yourself. You rediscover your goals, your boundaries, your preferences, your standards. Love should feel like shared growth, not one person dragging the other forward. If you constantly feel responsible for their emotional state, pause. If you feel like the relationship would collapse without your effort, pause. If you feel drained but guilty for feeling drained, pause. Those are signs you're carrying what is not yours. And the moment you set that weight down, your identity begins to rebuild. In the next chapter, we will explore how to reclaim yourself without leaving the relationship. Because sometimes the goal is not to walk away, it is to return to yourself while staying. Chapter 8. Rebuilding yourself without walking away. Taking your power back does not always mean leaving. Sometimes it means staying differently. Staying with awareness. Staying with boundaries. Staying with identity intact. Many people believe reclaiming themselves requires dramatic action, a breakup, a confrontation, a complete reset. But often, the most powerful shift is internal, because losing yourself was internal. So rebuilding yourself must also begin there. The first step is separation, not physical separation, but psychological separation. You must separate your identity from the relationship. Right now, ask yourself, who am I outside of this person? Not who you are when they're present, not who you are when they approve. Who are you independently? What do you enjoy alone? What do you believe strongly? What goals excite you that have nothing to do with them? If these questions feel unclear, that's not failure. It's simply evidence that your identity needs attention. Rebuilding begins with small acts of independence, not rebellion, not withdrawal, independence. Start reclaiming time, 1 hour a week that is entirely yours. No texting updates, no checking in, no emotional monitoring. Just you, doing something that reminds you who you are. It might feel uncomfortable at first. You might feel guilty. You might feel anxious. That anxiety is not a sign you're doing something wrong. It's a sign your nervous system has been over-attached, and you are recalibrating it. Next, reclaim decision-making. Notice how often you defer automatically. What do you want to do? Whatever works for you. I don't mind. These phrases seem flexible, but if they dominate your speech, your identity fades. Start expressing preferences. I'd rather do this. I'm not in the mood for that. I actually prefer something else. Not aggressively, calmly. Consistency matters more than intensity. Another powerful shift is emotional regulation. When distance appears, don't react immediately. Don't chase reassurance instantly. Pause. Observe the anxiety without acting on it. Ask, is there real danger here, or just discomfort? Discomfort is survivable. You do not need to eliminate it instantly. The more you sit with uncertainty without collapsing into reaction, the stronger your internal anchor becomes. Reclaiming power is not about controlling the relationship. It's about controlling your responses. Let's talk about goals. If your ambitions have slowed, restart them quietly. You don't need permission. You don't need approval. Sign up for the class. Return to the gym. Restart the project. Reignite the habit. Momentum rebuilds identity. Identity rebuilds confidence, and confidence reduces dependency. Something else will begin to happen. As you become more grounded, the relationship dynamic shifts. If it was built on imbalance, it may resist your growth. There may be subtle pushback, not necessarily manipulation, but confusion. They may be used to your flexibility, used to your emotional availability, used to your constant accommodation. When you start holding space for yourself, the rhythm changes. This is where many people retreat. They think, maybe I'm being distant. Maybe I'm being selfish. But healthy individuation is not selfish. It's necessary. If the relationship is secure, it will adjust. If it depends on your shrinking, it will destabilize. Either outcome reveals truth, and truth is more powerful than illusion. Rebuilding yourself also requires reconnecting socially. Isolation fuels identity loss. If you've drifted from friends, reach out. Not dramatically. Simply reconnect. Relationships should expand your world, not replace it. The more sources of connection you have, the less pressure you place on one person. Pressure creates anxiety. Diversity creates balance. Here's something subtle but important. Stop over-explaining your boundaries. When you state a need, do not defend it excessively. You're not presenting a debate. You're expressing alignment. I need this. This matters to me. I'm not comfortable with that. Silence after that is strength. Over-explaining weakens clarity, and clarity is the language of self-respect. As you rebuild identity, something shifts internally. You feel less reactive, less desperate, less fearful. Not because the relationship is perfect, but because you are anchored. Anchored people love differently. They don't cling, they don't chase, they don't collapse, they choose. And choice is power. When love becomes choice instead of necessity, everything changes. You stop asking, how do I keep this? You start asking, does this align with me? And that question alone restores dignity. The goal is not to detach emotionally. It is to attach consciously, to love without merging, to connect without dissolving, to care without collapsing. If you can do that, the relationship becomes healthier. And if you cannot, you gain clarity about what must change. Either way, you win. Because you are no longer disappearing, you are reappearing, slowly, steadily, authentically. And that is what taking your power back truly means. In the next section, we will bring everything together, because reclaiming yourself is not a single action. It is a pattern shift, and once that shift happens, you never disappear the same way again. Losing yourself in a relationship rarely feels dramatic while it's happening. It feels gradual. It feels subtle. It feels like love. You don't wake up one day and decide to disappear. You slowly adjust. You soften. You tolerate. You accommodate. You fix. You give. You wait. And over time, you begin measuring your stability through someone else's presence. We talked about fear. How abandonment anxiety quietly drives behavior. How your nervous system interprets distance as danger. We explored identity fusion. How we slowly replaces I. We looked at the small compromises. The jokes you didn't address. The discomfort you minimized. The preferences you silenced. We talked about emotional highs and lows. How intensity can feel like passion. How unpredictability wires dependency. We unpacked people-pleasing, the belief that love must be earned. And we examined the savior role. How trying to fix someone can quietly erase you. And finally, we spoke about rebuilding, not by leaving immediately, but by returning to yourself while staying. Because here is something I've learned, both from watching people close to me and from my own experiences. The most painful breakups are not always with another person. They are with the version of yourself you abandoned. I've seen friends lose their voice in relationships. Confident people become unsure. Driven people become stagnant. Strong people become anxious. And the hardest part wasn't the relationship ending. It was looking back and realizing how much they had shrunk to keep it. And if I'm honest, I've had moments in my own life where I adjusted too much, where I tolerated more than I should have, where I mistook anxiety for love. And the turning point was not anger, it was awareness. The moment you see the pattern, you are no longer fully inside it. That's power. Taking your power back doesn't mean becoming cold. It doesn't mean loving less. It means loving without abandoning yourself. It means choosing connection without sacrificing identity. It means understanding that if a relationship requires you to shrink, it is not sustainable in its current form. Healthy love should expand you. It should challenge you, yes, but not erase you. It should support your growth, not pause it. It should respect your boundaries, not test how far they can bend. Here's a simple truth to carry with you. If you have to choose between self-respect and attachment, choose self-respect. Because attachment built without self-respect will collapse eventually. But self-respect attracts healthier attachment. If you feel like you've been disappearing, don't judge yourself. This pattern is human. It's wired into fear, into longing, into the deep desire to be chosen. But being chosen means nothing if you stop choosing yourself. So here is a small challenge. For the next 7 days, say one honest preference out loud each day. Take 1 hour for yourself without explanation. Pause before reacting to emotional distance. Notice when fear speaks, and don't let it drive. You don't need dramatic transformation. You need consistent alignment. Remember this: love should not cost your identity. If you must bend, bend with awareness. If you must compromise, compromise mutually. If you must give, give without self-erasure. And if you ever feel yourself shrinking again, ask, am I loving or am I surviving? That question alone can change everything. Because the strongest relationships are not built on need. They are built on two whole people standing side by side, not merging to survive, but choosing to connect. And the moment you return to yourself, that's the moment your power returns. Thank you for spending this time here, and more importantly, thank yourself for being willing to look inward. That is where real strength begins.